So today I am going to install a USB charger on my 2018 350 EXC-F. I've looked on YouTube and the internet for videos on this, did some research, didn't really see too much as far as videos on this particular bike. I did see some videos that kind of went through the process of doing this, and of course there's many different ways of installing a USB on a motorcycle of this type. There are a lot of options out there. There are different ways to tap into the power. You can connect directly to the battery, which means you need a switch or something incorporated in your installation so that you can, when you turn your bike off, you turn off USB power, otherwise you risk draining your battery. There are the options of tapping into the fuse box, and there are different options of actual USB adapter. You can get a single USB adapter, you can get dual USBs, but you need to make sure that you have a high enough current available from your USB charger. 2.1 amps is pretty common. There's some that go a little higher, some that go a little lower. What I settled on was the Yonhan SAE to USB adapter. It's an upgraded version. It says the model number is GSG2016P-4.2A, which is definitely enough to power anything I would want to put on this bike. That should cover even fairly large tablets. I only plan on using my cell phone right now. Maybe later I also install GPS or some other device, or use it for charging or powering a light. I'm not sure. With this adapter I have plenty of power available for any future applications. To get power to the adapter, I chose an O-ring terminal harness with SAE connection, and it's got a 7.5 amp fuse in it. I like the 7.5 amp fuse because there's a lot out there that offer 10 amp fuses or higher fuses, and of course you can replace the fuses and make it as low or as high as you want. If you change the fuse from what you purchased, it's just another item you have to buy. This one already had a 7.5 amp fuse, and it's 18 gauge wire, which is not too large and is also not too small. That's a good size. As you can see here, I've already prepped the bike. I've removed the plastics and the gas tank, and there's also this rubber piece right here that goes right there. I've removed. I've already cleaned all of it up really well, which is always a good idea before doing any kind of work on your bike. I just finished doing the valve clearance check on this bike, so of course I washed the bike before doing that work. So one of the biggest decisions you have to make, other than choosing which USB adapter you want to use, is where you want to take power from on your bike. Your key switch will not turn the power off if you connect directly to the battery. So you have to have a way to either disconnect or actually turn off the USB charger so you don't risk running your battery down. The preferred way, in my opinion, would be to use power that is controlled by the key switch. So in the air box there are these two solenoids, and what I found was there is a good place to connect to for this switchable power on this inside solenoid. The solenoids are removed fairly easily. First of all, they're mounted to a bracket by a rubber sleeve here. They mount to this rubber or plastic bracket here. So you can just pull them right off. Get that one out of the way. This one comes off the same way. Just lift it up and pull it out, and we have access to it. So you can tap directly to yellow wire with red stripe on the back of the solenoid. You can tap directly into that. There's hardware out there available. I'll show a picture of it here, an example from Amazon.com. You can also tap into the fuse box, but the fuse boxes on these bikes, they don't really have enough room to use the fuse taps. I saw in one video where the lid to the fuse box was cut to provide room for the fuse tap. I'm trying to not do any damage to any stock components. I like to install things so that I can completely remove them and everything is stock. But I'll show you how I'm tapping into this, which should work just fine, and it can be removed completely. But we have to actually remove the solenoid from this solenoid socket. Now the solenoid itself is this piece here, this kind of rectangular shaped, kind of dark grayish piece. And the black area here is the socket, and then the wiring harness attaches down here at the bottom. So now I need to take this solenoid switch out. I want to bring the wire into the bottom, and I want to use the blade that connects into the socket for the yellow wire with red stripe. And all you need are these two similar sized pieces of plastic like this, something thin. Don't use metal. I wouldn't recommend using metal. Use something that's plastic, very thin plastic. You can use maybe water bottle plastic. It's not very stiff. Some of it might be, but this is from milk jug. Milk jug plastic has so many good uses because it's thin, but yet it's very tough. So the way I'll do this is I will, one at a time, take my little plastic tab here. Just use your thumbnail or something, open this one up and squeeze that piece of plastic in there to hold it like that. That's good for that side. And then take the other piece of plastic and do the same thing for the tab on the other side of the solenoid. There we go. So you can see I got plastic in there holding both sides open. Then open your pliers up a little bit. Now carefully do this. Don't squeeze hard. This solenoid is just plastic. It's just a plastic housing with the electronics on the inside. Just grip it lightly and just gently rock it back and forth while you're pulling out, like so. So you can see, put my wrench down. Here's the solenoid. This is the solenoid socket. This blade here, this middle one, this is what I want to attach my power source for the USB to. This blade here gets constant 12 volts from the battery all the time. When you turn on the switch, this blade here then becomes energized with the same voltage that's on this blade. So this is going to be my switched power. This blade in the socket corresponds to this connection right here. So this is what I want to attach to. So, as I showed you before, I have this harness, and this is my ground wire. I will attach my ground wire here. This is my power wire, and it has the fuse. Should be room to feed this SAE connection up this way through the air box. Yeah, right here. Feeds through no problem right here. So you can just feed it through right here. Bring all this up. That's that. And then I want to bring my ground wire up through here like that. That I will connect here. I'll leave my power wire and my fuse in the air box. This end is useless for this purpose, so I'm going to cut it off. Heating up my soldering iron now, and I will use that just to melt this piece of plastic right here a little bit between this slot and this connection, and that's where I will run my wire through. So now I believe my soldering iron is hot enough, so I'm going to carefully melt away that little bit of plastic. Oh yeah, no problem. Beautiful. So now what I need to do is I need to make bare a little bit of the end of this I'll try about roughly 1/4 of an inch. If you've got wire strippers, those are ideal. I'm just using a pocket knife here. Now the idea is this will feed up through that middle slot there. See? Now the wire can come out. And then I would just bend those over and they would go into that slot, and then the blade of the solenoid, when it fits in the slot, will just capture those strands of wire down into that socket connection there, and everything will be solid. But I need to get rid of some of the wires because they're just a little bit too many to feed in there well. So I bared a little bit more wire, just removed a little more of the insulation here. So I'm about 1/2 inch now, I guess. And I've separated the wires roughly in half. And I am going to cut off half the wires. Don't need them for this application. Should be just fine. Using fewer wires than is in that entire cable there. And so the idea now is I will thread them back up through that middle slot. Got to get it in there so I don't. So I want to make sure I get all these wires up in there. I keep hitting it, cause them to kind of flay apart. Carefully. See, that wasn't very carefully, and it didn't come through very cleanly. So let me try something else here. Let me straighten these wires back out. Didn't really want to do that. Let me just kind of give them a little bit of a twist. That should be just fine. And then try it again to get them all the way through. Nice and easy. That felt good. Yes, see, there they are now. Now what I got to do is just bend them over, and they kind of fit through the little area I melted in the plastic there. And just need to get a screwdriver and just kind of get a really small screwdriver and just kind of push all those wires down into that blade connection there. Should be just like this. Just kind of push them down in there. Like so. Now I should be able just to insert that solenoid, and that solenoid should be more than enough to really clamp that in. That's going to make that solenoid kind of tight too. So there we go. That should give me a good positive connection. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and remount this solenoid back up. So my fuse, so I can pull that back a little bit, get this solenoid up there and put it back in its original mounting spot. There we go. Now my fuse is going to be kind of here in the air box, so I think, let's see, a good place for that, maybe just kind of tuck it sort of right in there like that. Then we put this solenoid back on, and it should kind of all work out pretty well, actually. There we go. So I've got my wire connected. Now I just need to tie wrap everything in here good. I need to make it to where this isn't something that will just easily pull out. So I'll put some tie wraps on it. Probably tie wrap this onto the battery terminal cable right here. It looks like a good place to put it. I've still got to get the ground wire over here, and I'll connect it next. Okay, so I have went ahead and completed the installation. And the most technical part of it was actually connecting into the power source of the bike, a switchable power source, which we've already covered that. I connected the ground wire of that harness to the frame ground here, and I've already torqued that to spec. So for the routing, I put a few tie wraps right here just to keep the ground wire away from where I think the seat, when the seat is installed, it makes contact in these areas right here. So I don't want the ground wire to come over here and be pinched by the seat. So I used tie wraps to make sure that was out of the way. The power wire, put a few tie wraps on it, one right under here, underneath the ECU. You just put them where you want to. You know, this can be anywhere you want to put tie wraps. Put tie wraps. I put one here also. And then the wiring goes underneath the fuel tank area. So the routing continues right here. And this is where two SAE connects. This is the power harness. This is the power harness here where I connect to the power source, and then there's an SAE connector here that connects to the cable that then goes to the USB adapter. I put shrink wrap over this connection just to help make sure it stayed waterproof, because it will just kind of sit under here and it can be exposed to water and dirt and whatever, so that just protects that connection, so you don't have to worry about that. Then I routed it on up through here behind the radiator a little bit. I went through this little cable holder here. This stock cable holder has already been used for all these other harnesses, so I just opened it up and went through there. Went behind number plate. You can route it any way you want to, but anyway, I finally got it to where it connects up to the USB adapter here. I don't know how happy I am with this mounting, but it's on there. I considered getting a different adapter because this one is just a little bit big and there wasn't an easy place to mount it. So I got it mounted using the hardware that came with it, the little mounting bracket that came with it and everything. And so if I want to remove it, it's easy to remove. I could just disconnect this connector, kind of tuck it in behind the number plate there, and ride without my USB adapter on here if I need to. But anyway, that's how it works. One note about this USB adapter, it has this power button here. And how this power button works is when you first turn on your bike, power will be on your charger, on your USB charger here, but the charger won't have power until you hit this power button. So every time you turn off your bike and turn it back on, you have to actually press this power button to turn power onto your charger. It's kind of redundant if you ask me. I would rather be able to just turn the switch on and not have to worry about turning on another button to get power, but maybe it's advantageous somehow. We'll see as I use it. We'll see if it becomes something that's that I'm happy to have. If not, I can always replace it. These parts are cheap. All in all, I spent about $25. And all I had to buy was this harness here to connect to power back here near the battery, and then the USB charger and this power cable, this SAE power cable here came with it, and they both connect beautifully there. And that's all there is to it. I hope this video was helpful for someone else wanting to install a USB charger on your KTM 350 EXC-F 2017 to 2019 model. Doesn't matter really what type of charger you use. Most of them have SAE connections, so most of them will you know, connect up the same exact way. I stated before, you can decide whether you want to connect directly to the battery, or if you want to use switch power like I did here, you can decide on your own how you actually want to connect to it. The way I did was free. I didn't have to splice any wires. I didn't have to add any other hardware such as a fuse tap or a wire tap or anything like that. And it's completely reversible. Completely remove this harness, the charger, and no one would ever know it was ever on the bike.